distribution.
Hello, everyone. If we can just get a seat so we can get started. 1 minute and we get started. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Football in Europe, Rules, Rights, and Priorities. This SFS Snack in Brussels is really about opportunities and growth for Europe. And what are the keywords of the day and of the year, which are basically sustainability, IP, media rights, and legal frameworks. This is all from a European perspective and how to drive growth through regulations and structure. First of all, thank you very much to Mr. NICOLA ZINGARETTI for hosting the Social Football Summit Snack in Brussels. And welcome to this session together. And I'm welcoming for the institutional opening, Nicola ZINGARETTI, member of the European Parliament, and GIANFILIPPO VALENTINI, founder of Social Football Summit.
Thank you. Just a few words, because we are here to speak about the football and not to listen one member of the European Parliament, but just to say welcome to all of you in this place in the European Parliament. As you know, every day we work to unite the 27 European countries. As Jean Monnet said, we work to unite peoples of Europe. We know that it is not easy. Many are against it in this moment, but we continue to think that it's very, very important to do, because only a more united Europe can guarantee well-being and peace in this moment. United Europe means uniting society, people, It means uniting industry, social models, culture, and even the sport sector too. So this discussion of yours is happening on the right time, I believe. At the beginning of the legislature, with the time needed to do what politics should always do: listen, understand, and act. Football is much more than a game. It is passion, identity, economy, and above all, a social bond that connects millions of people across Europe and in the world. That's why we, as European institutions, cannot ignore the challenges and the responsibilities linked to the football and the sport. From the respect of rules to the defense of rights of players, fans, workers, football can be a great example of what Europe should be: a space of fair competition, inclusion, and opportunities for all. The debate you start today is essential to set the right priority. We need to protect the values of sport from growing risk, speculation, inequality, and competition that threaten the spirit of the game. So thanks to you to being here, and thanks to Gianfilippo, Valentini to organize the event. Let's work together to make sure that the football remains what it should be: a common good, open to everyone, and a proud part of European identity. Thank you very much to be here.
Thank you, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. Today, we are in this important venue to continue our journey to the Social Football Summit, which is our main international football industry event, held every November in Rome, Stadio Olimpico. SFS Snack is our short-form conference and represent a moment of knowledge sharing and reflection on the industry. We are proud to be here. Is the best place to discuss the new challenges and development of the football industry at the European level. Ringrazio il Parlamento Europeo e Nicola Zingaretti for the hospitality and all the speakers here today. Thank you. Thank you, and I leave the floor to Paola, and I wish you a good start of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to start with the first panel, and we're going to talk about priority areas, combating discrimination and environmental sustainability in football events. And we're going to talk about that with Cristiana Pace, founder and CEO of Innovation Consulting, and Mr. Michele Uva, Director of Social and Environmental Sustainability, UEFA.
Good afternoon, everybody.
It's okay.
Yeah, sorry, just checking the mic. Michele, so I think the title of this panel is about football and Europe, rules, rights, and priorities. So can you tell us about UEFA sustainability strategy, rules, priorities?
Oh, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Valentini and Pucci, and of course Zingaretti to invite us to be here today. I will try to summarize in a few minutes what is our journey since 4 years. Now it's 4 years that UEFA is embedded in sustainability. We started in 2021 when we decided to set a new strategy, the Strength Reunion Strategy 2030. we decided to switch a little bit to try to embed sustainability in football. Football is not only 90 minutes, football is also the other period around the game. And the president decided to set a dedicated division in UEFA to try to address the sustainability issues in football, embedded in football, in the football DNA. For us, sustainability means social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and the most exciting phase was to understand that the 7 policies that we set for the human rights policies and of the 4 on environmental are extraordinarily interconnected. We take care of, first of all, of our child and youth players. We are more than 25 million registered players under 18. This means there's a big responsibility for us to protect them. They are part of the game, they enjoy the game, and they're part of our journey. And then I think we are the largest platform in the world. We have 2 billion fans around the world, and 250,000, more than 250,000 amateur clubs and more than 5,000 professional clubs. And we are working since 4 years to try to keep them in the loop. How we did it? Changing regulations. We started from the first putting the changing regulation of our ATRIC regulation means where we finance the 55 national association. If you want our finance, you need to have the SCS manager, means the manager of sustainability mandatory. You need to have a strategy. You need to have an action plan approved. The same is for clubs. Now in the UEFA club licensing is mandatory for each club to have the manager of sustainability, to have a strategy approved, and in the future also to have an action plan. We need to try to make a cascade effect. Sustainability is a top-down process, but also then at the end, our main goal will be that it is also a bottom-up. We are trying to make both, and we are trying to combine, as I mentioned before, football and sustainability in one project, and now we are on the way.
And it's amazing to see all the progress that you have done. It's I was privileged to see since 2021 what you have built with clubs, with national association. We were discussing that quite extensively, what that means. So the journey has been amazing. But it's not just a national association, it's not just the clubs, it's also events. And I think last year, obviously in Germany, there was a massive event, the Euro 2024, and sustainability was at the heart of it. But it's also small events that you are trying to bring along with the sustainability. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, UEFA is a governing body, European governing body. Of course, we take care of all level of footballs. Of course, we organize 23 competitions every year. Means that from under 17 to the big Euro, we call big Euro, that this year will be also in Switzerland with the Women's Euro, in July. And of course, sustainability was not strongly part of the strategy in our events. We started to set a new ESG strategy, of course, forced by the German stakeholders. We set an ESG strategy. According with our ESG matrix, we make the largest investment ever with the 31 million euros in sustainability, and we work on, of course, in the environmental area, but also in we call it human rights, but it's social area. That means also to protect our fans around that coming. It's a big Euros, but also under 17. This year we have the under 17 final tournament in Farwer. And we are an ESG matrix also for the tournament in Farwer. This means that we need to integrate it, and this is exciting because all the national associations are engaged, all the stakeholders. When we joined the national association and the government are part of the discussion, and of course it's the results are coming. We set for Germany 199 actions, and we reach at the end 120 actions. We have also certification by a third party. We try to embed concretely the end, moving also from environmental part with the new strategy, moving out from offsetting and going with another direction, but I think that we can talk later.
And I think my question for you will be on, you said you had under 99 activities for the Euros. How many you got for the under 17, and how that obviously has been tuned down a bit, the matrix, so that they cascade down to help the small events to be able to enact it?
Yes, of course, the big events like Euro is a massive in terms of investment, but also investment also in human resources, because this was the first Euro where for each venue we have one sustainability manager, and also we have 500 volunteers totally dedicated to these two big topics. Of course, we escalate, but in any case, there is a base of 60 actions for each tournament. This is the minimum requirements to host one UEFA tournament, to have minimum 60 actions dedicated to sustainability. We don't want to go down. We probably, and it's the very interesting thing that after Germany, also UK, Ireland, that will be the next host of Euro in 2038. They want to move more. And this is how we can say is a snowball that is coming, but it's important to be there, to have an ESG matrix, to have a third-party certification, and to commit it with not only with the budget, but also in terms of social impact.
That's a fantastic example of governance. You talk about the matrix and the ESG framework that you created at the Euro was like the stakeholder wanted it. So we talk about stakeholder. Obviously, we have visible stakeholder like the National Association, the clubs, but there is also the most invisible and equally important, I think, like a partner and sponsor. Can you elaborate a bit more on how you're trying to get them involved and what role they play? And
not invisible, the commercial partner, also the government. They are very visible. We have a lot of coming requests, and it's the amazing way to deal with the sustainability in football is try to have on board all the stakeholders. Nothing can happen if you have not the governments. Nothing can happen if you have not the commercial partners on board. Nothing can happen if you have not the NGOs on that work on that countries. This means that it's a common football is a common language, and we need to create the common environment to work on it. Normally is a long way, because the important thing is that we're starting from the process, how to build it. We're starting from the bid requirements, and then we move it with the action plan, and then we have also an internal certification system that is environmental and social performance evaluation that we want to reach at the end of each event. We are using many tools. We launched the infrastructure sustainability guidelines. We launched the circular economy guidelines. We launched the catering guidelines. Why not? Accessibility guidelines. We are giving to our 55 national associations and clubs all the tools that are necessary for them to deal with the sustainability. And we translated it in 35 languages that are the UEFA languages around our 55 countries. It's growing. The commercial partner expectations are growing. We will have a new colleagues. For example, we started from a team of 3 persons, now we are 15. We will have a new colleagues from May 1st that will deal only with the commercial partners. And the example with the circular economy with Pepsi, the waste management with Just Eat. We have a lot of partners that are engaged to deal with us to deliver the best action possible in sustainability. But once again, sustainability for us is not environment. It's also the social part, because we want that all people be happy and be part of football events, and of course of football on the pitch.
It's great, and you know, that is like I take my hat off to what you've done in football, because you actually give free of charge these tools to everybody to use it. So you have adopted a methodology that is the same across the border, so you can compare things. That is really good. I come from a motorsport background, so we haven't done that in the International Federation yet, but I'm sure there are conversation, and hopefully they will arrive there as well. Methodology is really important, and measuring, reducing numbers is one thing that UEFA has been really keen on.
Yeah, it's we set. I forgot to say that we set also the UEFA Carbon Football Calculator available for free for all the football organizations, but also for the other organizations. We have some international organizations that are using our toolkit, our calculator. This is very important. At the end, sustainability for us was a process, and we are trying to spread the process across 6 steps in our environment. The first step is the commitment. We need, as mentioned before, we need the top commitment, the top of pyramid. We need a commitment from our top manager, and then we need to plan the human, to plan and to have human rights forces to drive sustainability in our organization. And that's the first step is to create a strategy. Because if not a strategy, you can put in place only actions that are random actions that cannot deliver the right data. The fourth is the action plan. From strategy to action is important and fundamental part. In the action plan, you need to create the targets, KPIs, also to measure and to report what are your results. And at the end, the last is reporting and communication. Before was the opposite. We make actions and we communicate, or we communicate only and we don't make any action. Sustainability was only a TV advertising in our TV. This is not sustainability. Sustainability must be embedded in our DNA. That means as first action, strategy, action, measure, reporting, and then communicate it. This is our track.
And if you haven't seen yet, it's like there is a fantastic report from the Euro 2024 that is out with lots of targets, lots of data. So very, very useful to understand all this process. And one last question for me. We talk about carbon calculators and therefore like carbon emission. There is a lot of talking about carbon neutral, net zero, and lots of terms. And are we going to reach net zero? What we need to do with offsetting? What's your opinion on that?
I don't know if I'm in the right place to say that for me, net zero doesn't exist. Sorry to be so straight. And we can reduce it. We call them road to zero. We need to work to reduce our emission. But if you don't make the calculation, if you don't measure your emission, you don't know how to deal with to reduce the carbon emission. We switch from offsetting. We did it in the last years, but now we are moving also in the women's Euro and the women's Euro, the next competitions. We are switching from offsetting to mitigation. We are investing only in mitigation actions. And in Germany, we did a new climate fund. We've allocated 8 million of our financial resources to invest in the grassroots, in the amateur clubs, to reach the base of the pyramid and to try to implement it, the reduction plan across all the football pyramids, not only on the top. But it's no offsetting anymore, not zero. Zero cannot happen, cannot work. We are moving to reduce our emissions and to implement it also, and to invite also the clubs and the national association to reduce their own emission, because we are only 0.00001% of the total emission in our planet. For this reason, we want to take our part, but please don't focus only on football and for football we can do. But also to engage our fans, 2 billion fans around the world. We need to address what are the messages, how to waste in the best way, how to reduce the emission, how to use the public transportation. We want to be a facilitator, and we feel the responsibility to do this.
And I think you're doing really, really well. It's like we know, like, just a second. So this for you.
And this one
is for you.
Okay.
Sorry, I think it's like you're doing it really well. Like football is only a small part of the problem, but it's got really big visibility. So as you said, if you can actually tell people what football is doing and help them to change behavior, that is really like part of the big change we need to do to try to address sustainability generally.
We will do our part for sure. And thank you, because talking today means that also European Commission are on board, and we normally work very close together, and it's important to work together also with the media, with all the stakeholders. We need all on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm inviting the next panel, where we're going to talk about media, geoblocking, and broadcasting rights in Europe. And we're going to talk about that with Laura VILCHES from SROC, Sports Rights Owners Coalition representative and founder of VILCHES European Legal and Policy Affairs and LaLiga EU Public Affairs at LaLiga. And Giuseppe ABBAMONTE, director at European Commission, DG Connect. And PAOLA Marinone, CEO of BUZZMYVIDEOS, that happens to be me, so I'm already here. Welcome to the panel. If you can, no, sorry. I know, sorry. It's more here. I think it's probably better if we can move here because of the video as well. All right, so we're talking about IP in many different forms. And IP has always been a very important part of the creative industry, of the sport industry, and has never been so important as it and debated as it is today. Everything is happening from a sport perspective, from not just from geolocation and piracy, but there's a lot of value created. And also AI now is always talking about copyright. So it's all about copyright and IP. So what happened in the last 10 years and what happens now altogether that is now so important, more than it was even before? Like, why the debate is so heated right now, Laura?
The left.
The left, sorry, this one. Okay.
So first of all, many thanks for the invitation. Maybe just we'll start quickly saying what the Sport Rights Owners Coalition is. Usually you should know, but just in case. So it's a coalition bringing together more than 50 European, international, and national sport event organizers. And what brings all of us together is exactly the respect of our IP rights and the enforcement, and also the integrity aspects of the game, of the competition. So what we're seeing the last 10 years, we're seeing different things. So in the media market rights, we're seeing more and more diversity in terms of sport offered content in the EU countries. We're also seeing, well, something within the market is delivering, is working properly. Something that we are really working on as SROC and also the individual members as LaLiga and other sport federations and associations is the fact that we want our consumers to know where the legal source of our content is. So we're working a lot on giving and raising visibility of the offers in each EU country so that they can go to that source. In the SROC, for instance, we're working on a section on our website where the users, the fans, can go through member state per sport and see where the content is available, and the same is for some individual members. One of the challenges we're also seeing, especially for the last 15 years, I would say, increasingly more and more, is piracy. And this is very important for us. As you know, piracy of live events, the value of our rights is in the live. So once the game is finished, all the economic value of the visual right is finished. So the challenge we have is that the current regulatory framework, which is the Digital Services Act, is not adapted to fight piracy of live events. It's not adapted because the mechanisms there regarding intermediaries, their obligations, the fact that they need to remove the illegal broadcast of the sport event during the live window is not reflected. This is why we need, well, the Commission came up in 2023, and Mr. ABBAMONTE knows this very well, with a recommendation, whereas the Parliament had requested legislation to tackle piracy of live events. But of course, what we need now is once this recommendation is assessed, is that the Commission comes up with legislation, because this problem continues increasing.
What's the main challenge? What's the main challenge for you that you see from the right holders in general, like for football? Probably it's a very long list, most probably.
Well, I will just stick to the media perspective because there are many challenges, but there's another panel for that. So, well, as I said, piracy is one of them. I think you're referring to geoblocking and the way you can call it like that. It's the elephant in the room, but you can call it like that. So I think it's important, because before we start talking about geoblocking, a couple of things that I would like to clarify or to explain. First of all, the regulation, and of course the Commission is looking at it. They are looking at how the current regulation is applied. And of course, audiovisual services are excluded from the regulation, and there is a good reason for that. The reason is that the regulation is not fit for purpose when it comes to audiovisual services. The regulation is about unjustified geoblocking. The geoblocking practices currently in the sport audiovisual market, they are justified in our view. There is sometimes we're still doing a lot of pedagogy as a stroke, and also as football leagues. There is usually the misunderstanding that geoblocking techniques in our sector are preventing consumers from having access to content. They're not preventing consumers from having access to the offers that are available in EU countries. But it's this negative connotation about geo-blocking that makes sometimes a little bit this misunderstanding. One thing that MEP Mr. Zingaretti referred to before was the value of identity. And this we see it very, very much in sport. The thing is that fans across the EU, they don't all follow the same sport in each country. They have this sentiment of identity, pertainance, not even football. I mean, if we take LaLiga is very much followed in Spain. And it's also followed outside of Spain in the EU. But the audience and the value is not the same. In Spain, we see it. The fans really follow the game. And outside of Spain, they do as well in the EU. But for instance, in Belgium, the main football league that the Belgians are following is not LaLiga, is the Belgian league. And after that, the other football competitions and sport competitions, they are presented in packages, bundled, and this is the way they are watching the games. But this dynamic is very important to understand, because this is also reflected in the pricing. The price of LaLiga, and this I need to explain very well, otherwise, about the pricing. So in Spain, without telecom package, without VAT, without all the things surrounding the offers in Spain now, LaLiga costs monthly 35 euros. But the price of LaLiga here bundled with other non-Belgian competitions or sports in Belgium is much, much lower. But this is because of the offer and demand of the market. So what we see, and this is something we've been discussing quite a lot with Mr. ABBAMONTE and the Commission, so it's not new to him, is the fact that if geo-blocking was to be removed or not allowed, the price that the fans of LaLiga, the price that the fans of LaLiga outside of Spain that they will have to pay will be this 35 euros in Spain, because that's the domestic market is where we have the most value, and the broadcasters need to recoup the investment. And for us, it's also very important when it comes to also the distribution that we do to grassroots and national level. So I think it's important to bear this in mind, because it seems a bit counterintuitive that, okay, if we get rid of geo-blocking, or if we prohibit geo-blocking or we don't allow it, consumers will be able to have the offers they now enjoy at the price that they now enjoy in each EU country. But these are adapted to the purchasing power of the country. So this is not going to happen. I can continue a bit more if you allow me. Because I also want to let Mr. ABBAMONTE speak. I have another point, and this is also very important. The European broadcasters are going to be heavily, heavily impacted. So European broadcasters, they operate on a territorial basis. Sometimes they cover one territory, sometimes they cover more than one, but they are the ones also through bidding procedures that we have in all sports, who acquire the rights. And they are also, we need to respect the fact that they cover the territories where they operate, where they know that they can adapt the content, where they know their audience. And if geoblocking was not enabled in our sector, we would be an imposition of a pan-European licensing. But the broadcasters, they don't operate like that. So at the end of the day, it's a bit, okay, so yes, the commission, well, there's some debate about geoblocking and this and that, but who is this going to benefit in the end? I mean, the consumers lose out, the broadcasters lose out as well, at least the European. We would see also that if that was to be the case, the broadcasters could not operate on a pan-European basis, they could not afford a pan-European license, and also there will be a concentration of large media companies that would not be European. So at the end of the day, we see this more detrimental, especially now in a mandate where we hear a lot the Commission saying that we need to concentrate on competitiveness, but the sport is one sector where Europe is excelling, where Europe is competitive. I understand, and then I will stop, so then Mr. ABBAMONTE can speak, because I have 2 other points. But I think it's important to bear this in mind. I understand that, okay, there is a single market for some sectors, it functions, but there's no single market for a sport because there's no single demand. And so at the end of the day, we want these reflections to be considered and to bear so that all this economic impact and social impact is taken into account. I'll pause here.
I have still one question then, but so what are the measures that you would like to see then happening?
Okay,
so now we definitely,
okay.
so we know what you see. I mean, that's definitely a view, and that's a strong view. But like, what is the future that you look like?
Yes. Okay.
What it should be from your point of view in terms of value creation and where the value could be created?
Yes. Okay. So, well, I mean, when it comes to the media rights, there are 2-3 things, at least 2 things that we see in the going forward. The first one is, and this is something that as SROC we have very strongly advocated for, and the European Parliament was very supportive as well, and the Commission as well, obviously, is a portability regulation. We're seeing that we think the portability regulation should be, if it is not being properly applied, it should be better, it should be properly applied. And it's something we have always supported. We understand, and we were having a look at recent Eurostat data, that there are 4% of EU nationals living, working in other EU countries than their national one. So we understand that portability maybe is helping a little bit with that. If it is not the case, okay, let's have a look at that. But we think that changing the regulation and including audiovisual services, because of this 4%, it would be very detrimental for the remaining 96% of the EU population, but also for this 4%, because at the end of the day, as I was saying, the offers, as we see them today in the EU countries, will cease existing. So in the end, it's going to be counterproductive for everybody. And the second point that we see going forward, and I mentioned it already, is piracy. We don't need a huge, I don't need a huge reopening of copyright directive, IRED directive, the DSA regulation. No, we just need a clarification. In the DSA, the notion of expeditious removal of notified illegal content is not adapted for live content, including sport live events. We need this to be immediate and a maximum during the live window. This would be for us a game changer. So it's not, I know that the Commission can maybe after say, but this will, I think, it's microsurgical, if I can say it like this. And it's something we've been asking for a long time. And we understand that DSA is horizontal, but the recommendation is not binding. And the data are showing, and let's see also what the EU IPO says at the end on the conclusions on the recommendation this year. But the piracy problem continues increasing. The piracy sport market globally annually is worth $28 billion, whereas the legal market is $56 billion. I think it's not something negligent as amount, and it's something that would help tremendously European sport. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. So now let's see what's the view of the European Commission, Mr. Abbamonte. What's the balance that you see from free circulation of audiovisual contents and the need to protect the value of the media rights? What's your view on this?
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. So let me thank maybe the organizer of the summit and Nicola Zingaretti for the invitation. I am delighted to be here with you. I don't know if you will be equally delighted to hear what I'm about to say, but so in all honesty, on geo-blocking, we can't see eye to eye. It will be impossible. No, and I have devoted all my professional life to the building of the internal market, so I can't agree with you. On piracy, we are absolutely on the same page. But I will say a few things which I hope you will find reassuring. So to answer your question, so we are fully aware of the importance of media rights for the financing of the sports sector and the practices. And I'm all too familiar with the claims of the sectors of the sports sector, the audiovisual sector, in particular the audiovisual sector, on the importance of territoriality and territorial exclusivity. However, we have collectively to acknowledge that European consumers may face restrictions when trying to access content, including football games, across borders due to these territorial licensing agreements. So even passive sales, not only about active sales, even passive sales are prohibited. And as a consumer, I'm not a great, unfortunately, football fan, but if I try to access, for example, Italian content from my home in Belgium, I get systematically geo-blocked, and I get very annoyed with this. So even if, I would be keen to pay and access legally the legal offer. So I am geo-blocked, but let's set that aside for a second. So with the portability regulation, we have addressed part of the problem of cross-border access. The problem of geo-blocking still remains. And with the piracy recommendation that you referred to, which was adopted in 2023, we encouraged also the sport events organizers and the broadcasters to increase the availability, affordability, and attractiveness of their cross-border commercial offering. And it is important to respond, in our opinion, to the consumer expectations and may also, to a certain extent, contribute to reduce online piracy. So as you know, audiovisual services are currently excluded, as you pointed out, from the geo-blocking regulation. There is an evaluation which is ongoing, but the issue as to whether the new regulation needs to be extended to audiovisual content will be set aside for the time being. And there is an issue that we looked into in 2020. We organized a stakeholder dialogue, which was a fiasco because the industry was unwilling to engage. So they came up with very limited proposals. So now the the aim will be to look at the demand side and to see if there is a real demand and what is also the weight of the demands. What is the extent of the demand for cross-border, for accessing cross-border content? So we will continue analyzing the risks, benefits, and challenges of a potential extension of the scope of the regulation to audiovisual content, but we are not planning so. To the best of my knowledge, the extension of the regulation to audiovisual content is not in the pipeline. Yes, and that's my answer.
And so, how are the EU policies support both consumer access to sport content and the financial sustainability of leagues and clubs that rely on media rights revenue?
We do it in two ways. So by creating a regulatory framework, which is industry and creation friendly, and that is a little bit the aim of the copyright framework. So to protect the creations, so the reward also the intellectual efforts of the creatives, and facilitate also monetization. And that was the very purpose of the copyright reform, and in particular the closing of what was called at the time the value gap. And I think we've been quite successful in that respect. Also, the audiovisual framework is important, so because the audiovisual regulatory framework aims at liberalizing the market, and so permits the broadcasting across border of cultural events, events of general interest, including, for example, football matches. An important issue under the Audiovisual Media Services Directive is the power of the member states to designate basically these events of general interest, which basically will have to be broadcasted, which are considered as public goods. And something which is very important is that as of next year, so we have already started a review of the audiovisual media framework with a view to tabling, with a view to updating really the current proposal. So all issues revolving around visibility, better access to content, including sports events and including football events, will have to be analyzed. So we are inviting you really to be switched on and participate in so to share all your demands and experience with us.
I see you're taking a lot of notes.
I didn't say anything about pirates.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna definitely get let's get to the piracy first, and then we get to the notes and see what she thinks as well. So piracy is definitely a key player here, because the value that is basically not invested in the media rights through piracy is definitely a phenomenal number. What I've seen in, like, I come from tech originally, from the creative industry and from tech, but I see especially the young generations, they really want to consume content in general. So I'm not saying that they need to consume legally or illegally, but the consumption of content, especially in sport, is more than ever. Like, people want to consume content. Now, the point is as well, how do they consume it legally, and they pay in the right way? Or anyway, there is a value creation, because the content really is something that everybody wants. So that, which is a good thing for the industry. People love sport, and every single generation loves it in different ways, and they consume it differently. But so what are the actions and the strategies that at the European level you consider and want to implement to combat this phenomenon, so that everybody can actually enjoy content more and more?
Now, but is the question about piracy, or is the question about cross-border access to audiovisual content?
No, it's really about piracy because then it's linked to
So,
television.
if it is about piracy, so we see eye to eye. So we are on the same page, as I said before. So for us, piracy is a plague which needs to be, it's like a cancer which needs to be eradicated. And it is the main objective of the 2023 recommendation. So we have the recommendation there. It contains a number of actions. It is a recommendation, so it's not a binding instrument, but it contains a number of actions, such as, for example, swift processing of the notices, including by intermediaries, a very effective usage of the new possibilities afforded by the Digital Services Act, and a generalized usage of the dynamic injunctions, which are used already in some countries, but not all. So we have the recommendation. It would have been impossible at that time to legislate on this matter. We had a brand new Digital Services Act. We were at the end of a policy cycle. But what we are doing now, with the help of the EU IPO, which is the Observatory for Intellectual Property in Alicante, we are looking into the assessment. So we are assessing basically the application of the actions set out in the recommendations, engage their effectiveness. So we will take stock of the situation in November of this year, and then we will decide what to do. Something which is important to be borne in mind is that in the mission letter of the Vice President Virkkunen, she's tasked, amongst other things, to look at the situation of copyright and, if need be, table proposals to better achieve the objectives of copyright policy, which are, as I said before, monetization and protection of creations.
Perfect, thank you. Laura, I see those notes are adding up. Is there something you want to add?
If I can, yes, I would love to. Well, Mr. ABBAMONTE and I, we come from far with the geoblocking discussion. So, I mean, Mr. ABBAMONTE, you say European consumers want to have cross-border access. I mean, no, I didn't say it right. You say it, and then I reply. No, go ahead, sorry.
But I think that you shouldn't take an issue now with me on geoblocking.
No.
We're discussing some reassuring statement. I say that there are some European consumers who may be dissatisfied with the fact that they get geo-blocked. And I didn't say European consumers at large. There are some consumers, for sure. I am dissatisfied, for example, and I am a consumer, and I have plenty of friends, not just in Brussels, who are, so it is not the whim of the Eurocrats. I have lots of friends, for example, who live in Italy, who live in France, who live in Spain, who are dissatisfied with this. What I said is that for the time being, the issue will be parked, and as part of the review, we will look into the propensity of consumers and the possible demand, and also the extent of this demand for cross-border, for accessing the offerings, the legal offerings cross-border.
Okay. No, I wanted to mention this because, well, thanks for the reassurance for the second time. I mean, because I understand that there are sometimes certain consumers in certain countries, they want to have access. But the question also is that you need to really look also into the value of the content, depending on the member state. You need to look into how the licensing is working. We want our fans to have access to our sport competitions, of course. But the thing is that the dynamics of the market, they are, as I explained before, and it's not that the content is not available. Yes, the content is available. So I think sometimes we also need to see, is it a question of availability? Is it a question that you want to have it in your language wherever you are? And this, but these are nuances which are important because the broadcasters, they are investing also you know, in commentators, in languages. And I'm not saying that, you know, that the market doesn't want to improve and to deliver. And I think if this is a discussion we need to have further down the line. But I just think we need to be also, you know, you need to take into consideration, and I hope and I want to believe that you will as well, that the broadcasting landscape, the way it functions, you see what I mean? I understand portability has addressed some things, not everything. Okay, let's see what portability has addressed, what it hasn't. Maybe, you know, the question around linguistic groups, okay, but I mean, because in sport, we're doing already many things with our broadcasters on a contractual basis. So also what we want to, you know, to deliver as a message is we want to be constructive. We want to, you know, to deliver to the fans, but you also need to take into account the economics, because this is sport is an economic industry. Yeah? I mean, we are nearly, and the head of the sport unit is here, I think recently, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot now. He recently mentioned in the parliament, we're nearly contributing sport and sport-related activities, 3% of the EU GDP, and 7 million jobs in the EU. So just, you know, when considering, you know, all these aspects, please bear that also in mind in the broadcasting landscape. And something more, and then I will pause. Availability and affordability will help reduce piracy, okay? Because this is something we're very much confronted sometimes. Even the most recent EU IPO study in online copyright infringement has kind of, you know, how can I put this? Has not joined together the question about pricing and piracy, because it's even happening in countries with high GDP. I think the problem also with piracy is that as a legal market, we cannot compete with the piracy market. The piracy market, the pirates don't have operational costs. The broadcasters, they do. We're all paying taxes. The pirates, they don't either. I just want you to also, if you in the commission, the politicians here can also bear that in mind. We need to tackle piracy. Once we tackle piracy, we will see if the legal market increases, and if there is something that can be looked at in terms of pricing, maybe yes. But now the situation as it is now with the figures I gave before on piracy, we just cannot compete with the piracy market, Mr. ABBAMONTE. That's the reality. Okay, now it's your turn to react.
I have never said that you should competing with the pirates. I simply say,
Can't.
if you
Sorry.
may access something legally, you will have no excuses to do it illegally. It is as simple as that. But I think that this discussion is a little bit, so it's not really timely, this type of discussion, because we agree completely on the need to put in place a robust strategy to tackle piracy at the root. Ideologically, on geoblocking, we disagree, but for the time being, we do not intend to do anything on geoblocking.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that from a European consumer perspective, definitely there is always more and more need of content. Definitely the heated debate, which I can see today, it means that it's going to be a better output at the end of the day. So thank you for being here with us today. Thank you. All right, and moving. Okay, sorry. I promise I'll learn before the end of the day. It's the left one. So we're moving on to the next panel, and that's about football governance and the legal struggles that shaped football. And we're going to talk about that with Giorgio Guzzugli Marini, Deputy Head of Sport, European Commission, Jean-Louis DUPONT-HISSEL, Carlo Rombolà, Studio Rombolà, Alexandre Bielefeld, FIFPro Europe, and Mathieu Moroil, the European Leagues Association. All yours.
Good evening all, and welcome to this final round of this exciting afternoon of discussion about the future of football, our beloved sports. My name is Carlo Rombola. I work as a lawyer and a university professor in Rome, in Italy. And it's on me right now to introduce and moderate the following debate on the football governance and the legal struggles that shaped football. To do this, I won't be alone, but I'll have the pleasure to be with Mr. Giorgio GUAZZUGLI Marini, Deputy Head of Sport Unit at European Parliament. Welcome, Giorgio. Mr. Alexander Bielefeld, Vice President of the European Leagues Association. Welcome, Alexander.
That's a bad start.
Okay. Mr. Mathieu Morel, Director of International Football EU Affairs at English Premier League. Welcome, Mathieu. Sorry. And Mr. Jean-Louis Dupont from DUPONT-HISSEL law firm, who literally contribute to shape the international sports law with the several legal battles that managed during his career, Bosman judgment, and not only. Welcome, Julie. Well, I would start by Mr. GUAZZUGLI Marini, to whom I ask, assuming that in the recent year, European football has seen a growing gap between elite clubs and mid-level teams. What strategies do you believe are most effective in ensuring greater economic sustainability and a more balanced competition?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to say, thank you for introducing me. I'm not from the European Parliament. I'm from the European Commission.
Disaster.
I have to say, not a disaster. I'm probably in this panel not a legal expert, because as you know, the sport unit in DG Education and Culture deals with sport more at 360 degrees. But I will start with perhaps making a sort of caveat, in the sense that when it comes to sport at the European Union level, we have certain limited competences in entering into defining the strategies and the rules that could be applied at the level in the governance in football. So this is important to clarify that. Of course, we value also what we have in the European sport model, not only in football, but today we talk about football, the value of the autonomy of sport. So the autonomy of federations, associations, to define the rules of the game, to define the way competitions should be run, and so in a way, we consider this autonomy, but as it was said also by the honorable member Zingaretti, sport is and football is a very precious thing in Europe, and it's part of our cultural heritage. So I would say autonomy is very much linked also with responsibility. So I was hearing also the UEFA director, hearing what they are doing in terms of promoting good governance. For us, this is fundamental. So if I can reply to the question, for us, one element is important. We value good governance in football. We think that having a better governance in the way football is run will definitely lead to better and more economic sustainability. So to come back to the question, so we in a way, when we talk about governance, we talk about also establishing clear rules, having a sort of system of monitoring that the rules are applied, and also having a system of corrections if the rules are not applied. When we talk about rules, we also consider the fact that it would be important in terms of governance to involve as many stakeholders as possible. So to involve in the decision making, in establishing the rules, those who are also part of the system. So here we are talking about the national football associations, the players, the coaches, down to the ladder, also to the fans in a certain way, because of course we are in a way, as Europe, we see that there is this responsibility of protecting the game, which is not only an economic industry, but also this intangible European cultural heritage. It has a big power of social cohesion. So in that sense, to be in a nutshell, we see that this sort of a governance that allows for implementing football in a way that balances the economic interests, but also the social and dimension and the passion around football is essential. Then, if I have to say last point on this is that we see the value of, again, a specific feature in Europe is the value of having a more competitive balance, which is based on merit. So this competitive balance of allowing systems of promotion and relegation, having clubs that have the possibility to compete at the highest level. So all this is interlinked. So this competitive balance can be assured if there is a better financial sustainability at the level of in the business model in sport.
Thank you. Matteo, let's talk about Premier League. What are the main challenges that Premier League sees in strengthening football governance in Europe, and what role can national leagues play in this process?
Thank you, Carlo. So I'm indeed the director of international football relations at the Premier League, but I'm also I sit on the board of the European Leagues Association. That's where the confusion comes from. This is the association gathering the national domestic leagues. Mr. ABBAMONTE mentioned Serie A, member of the European Leagues, LaLiga, where Laura works, is also a member. We've got, almost 40 domestic leagues, and we basically at European leagues, we're trying to defend the voice of those domestic competitions within the European football ecosystem and the international one. So the main challenges, I'm not going to go back on to geo-blocking and piracy, although I'm very interested in that, as Laura and Mr. ABBAMONTE know. But in terms of football governance, I think the key thing for us is really to make people understand that domestic competitions are really the bedrock of European football. This is where, small, medium, big clubs are playing. More than 1,000 of professional clubs in Europe, hundreds of thousands of players. This is really the bedrock of football. It has been recognized by the UEFA president at the last Congress, actually. This is really important. This is the basis of the pyramid. And Giorgio, you mentioned the open model, the promotion relegation. This is really important for us. This is where basically it all starts. Amateur football, domestic professional football, up to international club and national teams competitions. I think, you know, we need to keep that in mind, because today we've got more and more international matches, more and more international club matches, and it creates a huge issue in terms of calendar, in terms of scheduling matches, in terms of fatigue for players, workload, and I'm sure Alex will mention that, but also in terms of competitive balance, because when you have more and more international matches, more and more prize money for those clubs who play those international matches, which usually are the biggest ones, you create a situation where the competitive balance, which is the key thing that you are trying to maintain at domestic level to make competitions interesting, this is disrupted. FIFA just today announced that the winner of the FIFA Club World Cup, a new competition created out of nothing, will earn 125 million. 125 million. This is probably 50 times what all the clubs in the Slovak League will earn in one season. So I think we're creating situations where, you know, if we don't pay attention, all the industry, all the financial resources will go to international competitions, which, frankly speaking, will be a shame. Domestic competitions have always been the cake. International competitions are the icing on the cake, but if they become the case, we're going to have a huge problem. So that's the main governance issue that we're facing at the moment.
Thank you very much. Jean-Louis, the Super League case has challenged the monopolistic structure of UEFA and FIFA. Do you believe this ruling will lead to a more open and competitive football governance model, or will traditional institutions find ways to maintain control?
Okay, I will also start with a caveat. I'm not speaking on behalf of any of my clients, just in my own name, which allows me to speak up and out my mind. To answer your questions, it depends on what you mean by control or centralized control, and by what you call institutions. Firstly, FIFA, UEFA, IOC, and others, they are not institutions. This European Parliament is an institution, and a democratic one so far, and I hope for long. FIFA, UEFA, IOC are just private organizations based outside the EU with a long tradition of ignoring the EU rule of law. That private nature of these organizations has been clearly established by First Advocate General Spunar in the Antwerp case, and even more clearly, may I say, by the courts in all its recent sport judgments. It's a fact. It cannot be debated anymore, and it's there for long. Having said that, we have now to define control by those organizations. If controls means to use their regulatory power in order to favor their business activities, that control, thanks to the European Super League judgment, but also the other sport judgments, will no doubt disappear. Indeed, in ESL in particular, the CJEU has judged that such a behavior, which results from this structural conflict of interest, wearing two hats, is a major abuse of dominant position. Red card every time. On the contrary, If control means that these organizations accept to become pure and genuine regulators, to focus on their real regulatory missions for the good of the game, then it is possible that these organizations will be part of the solution instead of being, which is the case at the moment, in my view, the core of the problem. The choice is theirs. But as long as they will not, as long as they will try to abuse their regulatory power to serve their commercial interests, you can be sure that the other stakeholders will keep asking the CJEU to show them more and more red cards and heavy ones. And to conclude, if these organizations accept to be just regulators, or let's not be daydreamers, at least get close to it, then we will have indeed a more democratic and competitive football governance in Europe. 2 points. First, whatever the name and the dressing and the format, they will be a European Super League managed by the clubs, like the clubs manage their domestic leagues for decades. And this will happen either with UEFA or without UEFA. In my view, the key to success will be that this European Super League be able to find the right balance with the national leagues and with the players' unions. And this is the most important thing. That ESL will be a unique technology driver for the EU. It will generate a Netflix of football controlled by EU companies. At last, we will have the digital champion that the Commission and this European Parliament have been desiring so much for so many years. And second, the labor market, both at European level and national level, will be regulated by collective bargaining agreements between FIFPro Europe and its national members and European or national representative of clubs, in particular European leagues, but also ESL. If one day there is an ESL, collective bargaining will be needed at each level where you will have players and clubs operating. In other words, no more FIFA unilateral transfer regulations. We will come back to that. And that's it for this very interesting question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Alexander, with the increasing number of matches due to club and international competitions, player workload has become a major concern. What concrete steps is FIFPro taking to push for regulatory changes that ensure better protection for players' health and performance?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers. My name is Alexander, I work for FIFPro Europe, the trade union network of player unions in Europe. Before I come back to your question, let me come back to a couple of the points that have been said before, because ultimately that's also connected to the questions of calendar and workload and governance ultimately. I think if we go back and if we go to the title of this panel, I think that players have always found the way in the labor sector in sports to fight for their rights, but also to organize themselves and together with their employers in the sector to basically create lasting, sustainable and viable competitions. And if we go back in time, there's two players, Jimmy Hill and George Eastham, who did that in England already in the 60s, right? So these struggles which we are at the moment experience in the sector or in general, they're not new. They have been there for generations in our industry. Now, when we look back, I think it's also quite obvious that sports, that professional football as an industry, that we're always a child of our time. So if you go back into the 90s and you take the Bosman case, which Jean-Louis was a part to, but also FIFPro Europe was a part to, then obviously this case doesn't appear out of nowhere, right? It's the end of the Cold War, it's the emergence of commercial television, it's the emergence of a different labor market in football, it's the emergence of the treaties of the European Union around Maastricht. So there's a lot of things that are happening in this period of time, which then also brings us to that case by the player and to the decision by the courts. And ultimately it takes six years to actually also politically negotiate between the parties and also to find an exchange of letters between the football stakeholders, back then UEFA and FIFA, and the European Commission. So what I want to say with that is that we can always find court rulings to address challenges in our period, but to what Giorgio said, we always need political solutions in our sector, right? And we found such a solution in 2001. I think nowadays, what we can see is that obviously the approach to sports regulation by the European institutions, also by the European Commission, has changed, right? There was huge interest also immediately after Bosman. We had then the white paper of the Commission, we had the Treaty of Lisbon, Article 165. We had a period where we were relying too much on the autonomy of sport and the so-called European model of sport. And at the same time, our industry was going, obviously, in the last years through tremendous challenges. As every part of our society, we were affected by changes at the international level, but certain trends that also affect our industry. And that has led to legal challenges again, quite frankly. And I think the different court rulings, Mathieu referred to that, Jean-Louis referred to that, ultimately also requires us to find a new social contract in this industry, which is based around social dialogue, around collective bargaining, to actually align the governance of sport with EU law and EU regulations. And the European stakeholders have taken a first step on that. Together with ECA and UEFA, we have strengthened the European social dialogue here in Brussels. And this is a step we want to take. At the moment, we still have a vacuum at the international level with FIFA, because at the moment we have not found a way to actually integrate these European principles of governance also at the international level. And that's actually affecting at the moment also these legal debates and these legal challenges, which player unions and leagues have brought for the first time on the matter of the match calendar and ultimately player welfare and player workload, right? But those are industrial conversations. When we talk about the match calendar, there are three dimensions which I think are important to outline. I think there's a dimension of the match calendar which is in around governance, on how we schedule matches and who's allowed to schedule matches and how do we decide on that. And that's a connection between the international and national level, as Mathieu said. For us, the majority of jobs of players is at the national level. It's in national clubs. That's not just the importance for us as professional players in terms of employment opportunities, but that's also connects to the cultural element and to the element of European communities Giorgio was referring to earlier in his remarks. But of course, there's also an economic element to it, right? And Jean-Louis spoke a little bit about unilateral decision-making in the professional football industry. And clearly what we have been seeing as player unions is that, in this case, FIFA has taken unilateral decisions on the match calendar, which is a regulatory competence of FIFA, and the setting of their own competitions. Mathieu referred to the prize money around the new Club World Cup. And clearly those two things were connected. The timing of this new competition has been set in a way that it interferes with the holiday periods and rest periods of professional players. It actually impacts national collective bargaining agreements. It violates European principles on social dialogue and collective agreements and collective bargaining, all fundamental European legal principles that are enshrined also in the acquis. So I think from that perspective, it's really important to understand that economic impact that we're seeing from these international decisions trickling down to the international level. And then last but not least, as you say, it has a massive impact on the health and safety of the players, on the welfare of the player, on player workload. We can see that we as unions, and we cannot negotiate that any longer just at the national level through the collective bargaining agreements between leagues and player unions. We see that so far our industry at the international level has failed to set standards when it comes to player welfare and player integrity on health and safety. We're absolutely not in line with any types of standards that we have existing also under EU law. be that on the Charter of Fundamental Rights, dignity and safety at work, be that on the Working Time Directive, Occupational Health and Safety Directive. So I think there are a lot of legal elements in these cases as well, and very happy also in a minute or later on to speak a little bit more about the player perspective on workload and actually what constitutes workload from a player perspective. But I leave it for the moment at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Giorgio, we have now heard the point of view of footballer perspective, I think, on challenges faced by athletes nowadays. So, Giorgio, what is your perspective on this matter?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, basically, also as Zingaretti said it at the beginning, as let's say policymakers in the institutions, our role is first of all to be on a listening mode, to really understand what is the situation, and then eventually to act within the limits or the boundaries that our prerogatives are. So this is just to say that we are indeed, we hear well that there is a concern, there is a growing concern of tackling the issue of athletes' rights and athletes' well-being. So Alexander mentioned much better than I could do the challenges. And we also see, probably this has not been mentioned, but also now the fact, an increased commercialization, also issue related to workload of athletes in terms of exposure to media, to commitments and that. So outside the pure sphere of their performance, there are also issues of rights linked to specific types, not types or categories, how we would say, women or athletes who have disabilities. So this is to say that we together with the council, so with the member states, we are planning now to launch what we call an open method of coordination at European level, meaning that the member states will get together in the next months together with experts brought at national level to discuss the matters of athletes' rights and well-being. And the idea is ultimately also to put forward some non-binding recommendations to address to the sports ruling bodies. And we also see the athletes' rights in being more involved in governance, as it was mentioned before. So in that sense, my point is that we need to better understand, to better see what, and of course we see that there are different realities, that realities faced by elite athletes are different from the ones that are faced by athletes, football players at in maybe lower levels of domestic leagues, perhaps even different, maybe less exposure to heavy calendars. It's rather the opposite. So we are now entering into a phase where we would really want to have a better understanding together with member states before taking action. So we really value also these exchanges where we hear the views of different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, how can we balance the autonomy of national leagues with the need for more harmonized governance at the European level, particularly regarding UEFA competition and financial regulations?
So how do we make sure that the autonomy of leagues is respected? I mean, the answer is pretty simple, really. I mean, it has been mentioned by a lot of panelists here. I mean, if you want to make sure that the views of domestic leagues, which at the end of the day represent all the employers, big, medium, small clubs in all the countries, if you want those views to be taken into account, you have to involve them into the decision-making process. In fairness, UEFA has done that at European level. The leagues are represented at the executive committee. They're part of UEFA committees. We have a dialogue with UEFA. We are able to discuss the big issues, how their competitions and our competitions are working together. There is always room for improvement, and I'm sure we'll have other discussions in the future, but at least there is a dialogue. With FIFA at international level, there is nothing. And this is the very reason why we had to lodge a formal complaint in front of the European Commission, together with the players, which is a big step, because, you know, we think that FIFA is using its role as world governing body, as, you know, and using that role to, you know, give an advantage to their own competitions, and they're creating more and more competitions. And the Court of Justice has been very, very clear in Europe. You know, you can be at the same time a competition organizer and a governing body, but you have to respect very clear criteria in terms of transparency, proportionality, involvement of stakeholders. So we've got that case, and that case, the objective is really to make sure that both players' unions and domestic leagues, i.e. representative of the employees of this industry and representative of the employers of this industry, are taken into account, meaningfully taken into account, into the decision-making process when it comes to, but not only to, but mainly the international match calendar and the way that we can coordinate various domestic and international competitions.
Thank you very much. Jean-Louis, let's talk about the DRA case. The DRA case set an important precedent regarding the freedom of movement for players and competition clauses. In your view, how does this ruling impact the future of players' contract and club policies in Europe?
Well, in my view, it is very simple, because mainly you just have two options, two possibilities. First possibility, there is soon a collective bargaining agreement at the European level based on Article 155 of the TFEU that allows for European social dialogue. So a CBA, like in the States, like in the NBA, between players and clubs. And after, when there is this CBA, maybe UEFA and FIFA, if so decided by the stakeholders, can act as, let's say, administration of whatever system is decided. Well, UEFA and FIFA, if they are in the right spirit, could even take an active role, an active part in this CBA process, keeping in mind that they are not social partners. So social partners will always have to have the last word. Three comments on this first possibility. This possibility, I have mentioned Article 155 of the treaty, but it is very important also to mention Article 28 of the Charter for the Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Because you will read again, if you don't have it in mind, this article, and you will see that this article guarantees the very right for the social partners to negotiate and to conclude collective bargaining agreements at European level. In fact, the unilateral conduct of FIFA and all the problems it generates, as Mathieu mentioned, this is, in the view of at least the trade unions, and I think that Alexander will have a word on that, is just purely illegal. It's a violation of the constitution of the union, of the charter. So that's the first comment. The second comment, we understand that and Alexander has mentioned that, so far, UEFA is not close to playing a role in that process. Well, this is very interesting because we are talking about player regulation, labor market, transfers. So far, it's a FIFA competence. So I think it's interesting to take note that maybe, and that's great to know, that's me, it's maybe a first time that UEFA could play a role in helping to get a democratic governance by saying, okay, for Europe at least, we are going to take care with the stakeholders, meaning not on top of the stakeholders, but either next or below them, we will take care of the labor market if we want to have an harmonized system one way or another. And the last comment on this is the following. Sorry, it was very late, but I sent you a link with an article that has been written a few months before the Diarra judgment by Professor Melchior Wathelet, ex-Vice Prime Minister in Belgium many years ago, former judge at the ECJ, former first Advocate General at the ECJ, Professor Robbie Huben from Antwerp, and Professor Budzinski, German professor, economist, and they have written an article saying, what's next? So I really invite anybody truly interested in these matters to read that article, because you will see that they design there a different regulation of the labor market. They don't claim that this is the perfect one, but it's so different from what we take for granted, which is that transfers must exist, that it's really worth reading. And the French trade union made a press release saying, we don't say this is exactly what we want, but this is the way. So I said two possibilities. I'll be a lot shorter on the second one. The second possibility, if there is no CBA, and as long as there will be no CBA, is very, very simple. The rule of the game will be that every player will be able to terminate his or her contract just by relying on the relevant national law, as any other workers. And as we know, this social law in the national, in the member states, are very favorable to workers. And this could very well start happening in June. This is an important difference between Bosman at the time and Diarra now. Bosman, 15 December 95, June 96, hundreds of players were end of contract in Europe. So everybody saw immediately what were the consequences of that part of the judgment. In Diarra, it will take some players or their agents to have, let's say, the vision or the guts to say, hey, there is no risk anymore. I don't go to jail if I terminate my contract. So I will do it. So what I mean here is that FIFA, UEFA, and other regulators, they should not cry and say, this is chaos. No, the Diarra case went on for 10 years. Nobody tried to solve it before the judgment. That's the first thing. And now it's normal that in order to have an harmonized system, you must do it via the negotiation between these guys. It's only logic. And this is for the past. No, sorry, this is for the future. And for the past, like Lassana Diarra, every player will be allowed to claim from FIFA the compensation of his damage based on Directive 2014-104, which is the directive that organizes an EU common ground for individuals willing to claim compensation of damages arising from violations of EU competition.
Thank you very much. Alexandra, another question, another trend topic. Many top players and FIPRO itself have raised concerns about the overcrowded football calendar. Do you think the governing bodies are truly listening? And what legal or institutional actions could be taken to limit excessive match schedules?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think it's from our side, when our unions go to the locker room, this is the biggest topic the players are talking about. And it doesn't matter if you go to the locker room to Premier League clubs, if you go to the English national team, if you go to the clubs in Serie A and in the Italian national team, if you do that in France, if you do that in Germany, even if you do that in Denmark or in Norway, right? So we're often under the impression that probably this is just affecting a few top players and a few top earners, and therefore we don't need to care about that. First of all, from a legal perspective, that perspective is completely flawed, but I don't know who in this room knows Frederik Orsens. Frederik Orsens is a Norwegian national team player who plays for Benfica and who retired from the national team at the age of 27 just last year. And he announced his retirement due to the calendar, right? So clearly this is affecting the top end of the game, but it's also affecting players who simply play multiple and overlapping competitions, right? And this is a significant amount of players. Now, we have studied that, we have discussed this with players since probably 5-6 years. We have raised these concerns with the regulators. We could see that due to the internationalization and the competition about resources and competitions and slots in the calendar, that even in the next competition cycles, this issue would become a bigger issue in the industry. And we have now a revamped format of the Champions League. We changed friendly games to the new Nations League concept. We have basically made everything more competitive. And at the top end of that, FIFA has now also introduced the Club World Cup. Now, from a player perspective, when you talk about workload, this is obviously much more than just the matches, right? I think we have sometimes a too simplistic understanding of what constitutes workload from a player perspective. This includes, of course, the games, but also if a player, for example, from a conditioning or performance perspective is rested, but is still sitting on the bench, that player from a working time perspective, but even from a mental load perspective, is still playing, right? The player is getting ready for the match, is sitting on the bench, is traveling with the team. So we had, for example, like last year, one of the players with most matches was Phil Foden at Manchester City. He played 72 games, but he had 76 squad inclusions, all right? So even those matches where he was supposedly rested, he was not actually rested because he was traveling with the team. We have players who in this calendar rack up what we call back-to-back matches. Is the usual rhythm of what you know between playing on a Saturday, Sunday, and then midweek international competition, and then again on the weekend, where our experts basically say the maximum number you should play back-to-back is around 6 to 8, and that's already aggressive number from the high performance coaches. We have now Kim Min-jae from Bayern Munich, who just this season played 20 back-to-back games. Back-to-back games, you need to consider again, is something that is not just something we should consider from an industrial perspective on managing load, but also access to normal training, because 20 back-to-back games means the player is constantly traveling, constantly late night kickoff games, traveling to the national team, etc., etc. So it's an extremely grueling schedule. And then on top of that, and the biggest problem is that we don't have rest periods anymore at the end of the season. And that's one of the biggest concerns, because this is, as I said, something that is usually negotiated between the social partners, collectively bargained in the national standard player contracts. And due now, for example, the period of the Club World Cup, these annual leave periods and rest periods for the players cannot be honored anymore. So we have many players who probably have between 2.5 and 3 weeks off-season break, which is just not enough, right? If you had already an ongoing competition cycle. And the other problem is that we have in this, let's say, context of cannibalization of competitions, we have out of a 4-year cycle, we have 3 years of summer competitions. So there is just no rest. It's a calendar that always continues. I think the voices of players, I don't know, I think in our last report, I think we had so many players who were talking about this issue, specifically also last summer publicly. We have released so many videos. Coaches are talking about that, but you know, from a regulatory perspective, no one at FIFA wanted to listen to that, quite frankly. And the simple reason is not that, they probably don't understand the problem. The problem is that, no one wants to actually limit the access to the most important resource of this industry, which are the players, because everyone wants to fuel the economic value of their competitions. And at the receiving end of basically coping with all the negative aspects of that are the players, and at the moment also the national leagues, right? And I think this is something where we have tried to reason with the regulator on this, which is FIFA. They have ignored that for a long time. They have announced at their Congress in 2003 in Kigali that they would create a task force on player welfare. That has never met. We have then, and Mathieu mentioned that we have actually filed two court cases or legal complaints. There's a complaint pending at DG Competition, European Commission, which is very much based on Article 102 on dominant position, but also invoking health and safety regulations in Europe. And it has never happened that leagues and unions have filed a case together, right? It's very much unprecedented. So it shows you a little bit the scale of the problem we're facing in our industry. Because someone thinks they are actually operating outside of any set of rules and governance principles. At the same time, unions and one league, LaLiga, they have also filed a complaint at the Brussels Commercial Court. It's a case which is more based on Article 101 and on the Charter of Fundamental Rights that has the possibility to be deferred to the courts. So we can see again, right, that we are in this environment of finding legal solutions to something that actually should be solved through collective bargaining and social dialogue and collective governance, right? And I think this is also my message to Giorgio and to the Commission here, that for a long time we have talked about this concept of good governance. This is nothing that has resonated in our industry to what degree whatsoever. So we very much need a political solution and a political dialogue to that. I think it would be extremely helpful if also the European institutions understand that this is not just something about intervening and unduly regulating the sports industry. I think this is about actually protecting the autonomy. You were talking about the responsibility that comes with the autonomy before, Giorgio. I think I 100% agree with that. But that responsibility actually comes through governance mechanisms. And I think this comes clearly for us through social dialogue and collective governance mechanisms that we have in Europe and that we need to defend, quite frankly, because what we can see also that in our case, this is probably the largest or most important entertainment and cultural sector in Europe that we're talking about. This industry has a global footprint. And quite frankly, we're at the moment in a global competition in this industry. And there's a question about how this footprint and how this fabric of the European industry looks in the future in Europe, right? So what we need is a new social contract. We need some stability in the industry. And we believe that the European institutions, the Parliament, the Commission, they all can play a role to basically as a convener and as a facilitator. This is something we're looking forward to.
Thank you. George, another question. With ongoing discussion about new competition, salary caps, and striker financial regulations, what are the plans of the EU Commission to address the current challenges to European football is facing?
Yes, thanks. No, indeed. And I would probably also repeat a lot of what I said before. I think we are now really into this. We have I would say, certain political momentum at this point in time because there's a new parliament. There is also a commissioner, Mr. Glenn McAuliffe, who has now this portfolio on sports, youth and culture, but sports, so very much dedicated. So we will be now in the next months as European Commission, we will be on a listening mode. And this is not now for me to announce, but there are some ideas that we will have to be on a listening mode in these months to understand how and to what extent we can probably give our hand to address these issues in close cooperation with all the partners, with all the stakeholders involved. I think there is a need indeed to find concrete measures to progress, to try to solve some tensions that we see. They are tangible, they are growing. Of course, from our side, as it was also mentioned, we can act by essentially being facilitators or trying to increase a sort of self-responsibility on how the whole football sector, football industry, but also football ecosystem as a social, with a social value, should be run. So what I can only say at the moment is not really to enter into the different measures, but certainly we would like to be more concrete at the end of this consultation phase. So to try to propose measures that would help improving or fine-tuning the situation, preserving several elements. It's a quite complex issue. There are legal issues. There are also political issues, as it was mentioned, and essentially it's to find the right balance between keeping football as it is at the moment, you know, as an industry, but with an important social value, and perhaps looking at possibilities to have a long-term strategic objectives rather than being trapped into, let's say, daily interests from one or another. So to also reflect, perhaps again, I would call on this issue of responsibility to see the collective goods of Europe, of football in Europe. So this is all I can say at the moment, but we are really into and seriously committed to deliver some progresses towards the end of this consultation phase.
Thank you very much. Matthew, could you tell us what is the Premier League position on proposed reform to European football governance, such as stricter club regulations and financial fair play measures? And how does the Premier League collaborate with other leagues and European institutions to ensure a fair, a sustainable and competitive football system for all clubs?
So I've got a few ideas about reforms of governance. I think I've mentioned some of them basically, and you know, it's all about involving employers, employees, representatives into decision-making processes. If we get to that point, I think we will be able already to solve a lot of issues. If your question is more specific on financial regulations, what I would say in Europe is that, you know, we all work on financial regulations, whether it is national leagues or UEFA, as a matter of fact, you know, with their financial fair play regulation. UEFA, you know, is entitled absolutely to regulate their own competitions, and that's what they do. And obviously, at domestic level, we look at what UEFA does, and because, you know, majority of our clubs, if not all our clubs, aspire to play at some point UEFA competitions, which is again the icing on the cake. We try to, you know, find regulations and rules which are basically, we try to align with UEFA regulations. So, you know, I'm going to a meeting with our clubs tomorrow where financial regulation will be the hot topic, and we'll you know, basically we try to align on a new concept like squad cost ratio and these kind of things. However, I mean, financial regulations can't be the same for Champions League, Premier League, LaLiga, or, you know, the Swiss League, or the Czech League, or, you know, you have to accept that there is a bit of subsidiarity also in football. This is an important point. We probably don't need a one-size-fits-all, you know, solution on financial control. I think, you know, every single domestic competition tries to adapt to their own legal framework, their own culture, And, you know, to give you an example, in England, at the Premier League, we very much, you know, we very much try to, you know, maintain this culture of investment, of openness, because the key element is we're trying to make sure that there is not a, you know, situation which is completely blocked and all the same clubs always win. So we like when a newcomer challenges the big guys. That makes the competition exciting, and ultimately that makes the competition successful. So it's a fine balance when it comes to financial regulations between making sure that the bubble doesn't, you know, grow to a point where it's not sustainable anymore, but maintaining, you know, an environment which is open to investment and to newcomers, basically. So every single domestic competition has, you know, their own rules, but we're all trying to, in a way, basically, you know, align with what UEFA as principle are doing with their own competitions. The last thing I would say is rules are good, but you need to enforce them. And this is a key point. We've had at Premier League level very tough discussions with some of our clubs. I'm not going to enter into details, but, you know, we had, you know, deduction of points. We had a lot of, you know, decisions which are tough. And I'd be very happy to see other football bodies to do the same, in a sense that when you have rules, you have to enforce them. And, you know, I'm not sure that finding agreements with clubs is the best solution. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got rules, you need to enforce them. So that's what I would say on financial control. Last point you mentioned, how do we cooperate with other leagues? The European Leagues Association is all about that. We try to cooperate with all the leagues, no matter the size, the influence, the success. We've got big, small, medium leagues, and we try to work together. The key objectives are very simple: meaningful involvement of leagues into decision-making processes. 1, 2, making sure that our sporting models are respected. Weekends are for domestic competitions, and annual merit qualifications for international competitions are key. So this pyramidal model, promotion, relegation, this is super important. And third, there needs to be solidarity from top to bottom. And the more solidarity you have from participating clubs to non-participating clubs as well, the better it is if you want a sustainable European football ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Jean-Louis, in last question, in your view, what will be the next steps of Court of Justice case law regarding the sport governance?
Well, regarding the Court of Justice, on 16th of January, Advocate General Chiappetta, in the case of a Belgian club, Serein, versus FIFA and the Belgian FA, issued her opinion, and we expect the judgment before the summer holidays. In that case, we represent the Belgian club. And AG Chiappetta kindly backed up our position. So you may know that you have this thing called mandatory arbitration imposed by FIFA, UEFA, IOC statutes to all sport stakeholders, the famous Court of Arbitration for Sport. And you may also know that these organizations, FIFA, UEFA, IOC, and others, well, they have the practical possibility to implement their own disciplinary decisions, to suspend a player, a club, to prohibit clubs to transfer players, etc. Well, these international federations, they have the power to implement these sanctions when confirmed by CAS, CAS being financed by IOC, FIFA, and UEFA. So they have the possibility to implement these decisions themselves and immediately, without any need for what is called exequatur, meaning going to a national judge that will put the stamp and say, yeah, okay, you have a nice arbitration award, and now you can implement it. The judge does that only after controlling that the public order has been respected, which includes in the EU, the public order of the European Union. Advocate General Chiappetta kindly shares our view, which is that this is totally incompatible with the EU rule of law, and more specifically with Article 47 of the Charter, which provides for free access to a real judge, and which provides for, obviously, a fair process. Well, I hope, and I have good hopes, I would say, that the CJEU judgment will confirm the opinion of Advocate General Chiappetta, and this would undoubtedly lead to a revolution, and I'm serious when I mean a revolution, of the sport judicial system. Why? Because at the moment, the fact that these international federations based in Switzerland, outside the EU, manage to control their own judicial power is a key element of many, many issues and problems we face. Well, Diarra comes from there. It took 2 years before he was sanctioned to pay 10.5 million, and during that time, it was almost impossible for him to play football. He never got access to a judge. It took him 10 years to manage finally to find a judge that sent the case to the ECJ. But to conclude, let me tell you what I hope from this European Parliament and from the European Commission for the near future. I just hope that they will help enforcing the CJEU judgments, that they will, I'm sorry to say that, but at last, free themselves from the old propaganda and from, in particular for the Commission, from sleepwalking. In short, that they will truly be the guardians of the EU rule of law. Is that asking that much? As Mathieu said, rules are good, but you need to enforce them. This is also true for the EU treaties. And so far, for many years, I would say since 2001, with the exception of the International Skating Union case, the Commission has been sleepwalking, maybe for very legitimate political reasons. But the times, they are changing. And I mean, the red card that was shown by the European Court of Justice to the international federations, in my view, has been also in part shown to the European Commission. And just to finish, just one example. I represent Ticombo. Ticombo is an important stakeholder on the ticketing resale market in Europe. They receive, it's a digital platform. They put together somebody that wants to sell a ticket, a resell ticket, and somebody that wants to buy it. Ticombo received a prize of excellence for innovation from the European Commission. And Ticombo has lodged, quite many months ago, a complaint against UEFA and recently against IOC. Why? Because these international federations, regarding their international competitions, what do? They sell the tickets. Good for them. It's their show, so they can sell the tickets. But in their ticketing conditions, they prohibit any stakeholder to operate on the resale market. This is an easy case. This is a blatant abuse of dominant position. And this is not about sport governance, it's sport business. it will be very interesting, and I'm full of hope, to see if the European Commission, moves on these cases, or if, as usual, they say, oh, the national judge is better placed. Let's talk in 10 years. I would say that many stakeholders are kind of tired of that sleepwalk. I'm sorry, it's not personal, huh? You can imagine.
It's not personal. I don't comment on that. Also, because when we talk about European Commission, we talk about
I know.
Many services in the Commission. So.
Just another question. Many thanks, Jean-Louis. Just another question to Alexandre. Let's back for a moment to the RR ruling. The RR ruling reinforced players' rights regarding freedom of movement and contractual restriction. How does FIFPro see this decision impacting future negotiation between players, clubs, and governing bodies?
Look, I think what Jean-Louis just said, I think we're living in a time at the moment where it's very difficult to just look at one judgment in isolation. I think there's obviously a series of judgments that have a bigger meaning for the industry as such. But obviously, if you zoom in on the ARA for us as player unions, the regulation of the employment market, the direct employment market, direct regulations on the contractual conditions of a player, and basically when and when not a player can move and under what conditions. This is, I would say, very much the core business of the union. And I mentioned, I think at the beginning, George Eastham and Jimmy Hill, and it was already in the 60s, the cases on exactly the same questions, right? So from that perspective, the ARA was incredibly important for us. It was incredibly hard for the player, and Jean-Louis referred to that, to stay in this battle for such a long time. It was a uphill battle for the player for the entirety. It was absolutely not clear that the player would actually like to see this through. But at the end of the day, it came to that. And ultimately what we can see now in let's say, in the discussions that emerge from that is that some stakeholders try to isolate the problem strictly on Article 17 and on cancellation of sporting without sporting just cause. However, I think the principle from the ruling is obviously much broader, right? I think it's quite clear that the FIFA RSTPs don't fall under the Albany exception, that they would have been collectively bargained between the social partners, right? So for us, I think the entirety of the RSTPs would require review. And I think for us, the starting point probably also for 2001 principles are not bad. We also have stressed that in the latest meeting with the stakeholders in the European Sectoral Social Dialogue. But I think the most important part is that we need to collectively negotiate that. And I think FIFA still wants to isolate that on Article 17. FIFA still thinks that this is probably something they can unilaterally bargain or decide with one party. And this is not at all what we read from the ruling and how we basically think that ultimately, the judgment has to be applied and interpreted. So I think this is now, the responsibility for all the stakeholders. Again, I think the social partners, leagues and unions have been quite clear in what we articulated to FIFA on how we think the process now should be running. And again, I think at the end of the day, this is obviously something that we all should be treat with extreme caution. Employers and employees probably have, when it comes to the technical details, different expectations or different wishes, because they simply sit on a different side of the bargaining table on this matter. But ultimately, we all have an objective that binds us together, right? We want a transfer system or a system that regulates employment in our industry that makes it viable for this industry to exist and to flourish, right? And there are probably, like let's say, slight differences on how this can be achieved. But we are 100% clear from our side what the pathway to this is. So again, I think there is now a short-term fix that was found for the winter transfer period. And we need to find a long-term fix, and we need to take the time it takes to actually find that. But again, I think this is something, again, which we can't look at in isolation, because ultimately all of these legal discussions which we had, they're discussions on the governance of this industry. And the other falls right into this picture at this point.
Thank you very much. So really many thanks to all. It has been an interesting roundtable, and you all gave us a different perspective on the topic treated in this round. It has been an honor for me to be here and led this debate. Now I pass the baton to Paola for conclusion and greetings.